Hello world, I'm coming to you live from my kitchen where I'm here to do a Wentworth video. This is it, we're taking it back to the beginning. If you've not yet watched Wentworth, now is the time. So the Wentworth season 1 episode 1 review video begins now. So the series begins with street lights, and we're seeing all of these lights in the streets, and we're wondering what the fuck is going on. We're seeing cars in the streets. We see the brawler for the first time on the road, and then we get a glimpse of who's inside the brawler. And we see for the first time a woman. If we've watched the show before, we know that it's B. Smith. It's this woman. She looks frightened inside of the back of this car. And for the first time, we hear the melody, the theme music, the Wentworth theme music playing softly and slowly in the background. And we see her looking out the window. She's looking at people on the sidewalks, eating. There's people getting their hair done. There's some schoolgirls just chit-chatting, waiting for the bus. Who the fuck knows what they're doing? You know what I'm saying? But B is looking out the window and she's watching them. So I've been in the back of police vehicles in the past, okay? And this is exactly the shit that happens. You're looking out the window, you're in fucking handcuffs, you can't get out of the car, you know what I'm saying, and just go home, and you're watching the world just move while you're here stuck in a car that you can't get out of. The worst is when they drive by your house, because that happened to me twice. It was terrible. Then we hear a woman asks, "This your first time, babe?" And B looks at her, but she doesn't answer the woman. I would have got pissed off, because if I'm asking you a question, I expect an answer in return. So the woman tells her, "Oi, I'm talking to you. What's your name?" And that's when B tells her her name. She's like, "B. Smith." And the woman's like, "Well, word, soak it up, B. Smith." And then B just looks out the window. So she's basically telling her, enjoy the view, because it's the last time you're going to see the free world in a long time. So the brawler then stops in an alley, in a dark alley somewhere, right? It's nighttime. All of this that's going on, it's happening at night. The car stops and the back door opens. A guard has opened the back door to the brawler. And then that same woman that asked B. Smith, "What is your name?" When she sees the guard, she says hi to the guard. She says, "Good day, Chris. You know the drill, mate. You want a gobby?" Basically, a gobby is, do you want me to do things to your pecker with my mouth? That's what she's asking when she asks, do you want a gobby? And she's letting him know it's gonna cost you a pack of smokes. So the guard gets into the van and he closes the back of the door and he starts taking off his pants so that he can receive the gobby from this bitch. And then he looks at B. Smith. B's watching this and she's like confused, like what in the hell is going on right here in front of my eyes? So she looks confused, you know what I'm saying? And she's like, okay, this is what we're doing. The guard looks at B and B's like, you know, looking away from him. And he asks her, "Do you smoke?" Oh, Maria. So that was that. We all know what happened moving forward. The next scene is the brawler arriving at Wentworth for the very first time. So we are seeing Wentworth Correctional Center from the outside for the very first time. So B. Smith and the other bitch, they come out of the van, you know what I'm saying, and they're being walked into the prison. B looks at the gate, she sees the sign. Everything looks different in Sallyport. One thing that I noticed about this scene is that the governor was not there to greet the prisoners. You know how the governor is always there to greet the inmates when they arrive at Wentworth? The governor was nowhere to be found. So they're walking into the prison and B's like, you know, a little hesitant, but she's walking. And then the woman that was in the car with her tells her, "Home sweet home, love." And so now they're walking into the prison, and the first door they're walking into, I realize that there's like red bricks on the walls. And I was like, wow, I haven't seen a red brick in Wentworth in years. Watching this episode again, first of all, when season 8 came out in 2020, normally when a new season happens, I finish the season and then I go right back to the beginning and continue watching. When season 8 came out and we were all introduced to my precious baby love, Luke Kelly, okay? There was no going back to season 1. I couldn't. Why would I go back to season 1 when Luke Kelly is in season 8? You know what I'm saying? So I was stuck on season 8. So this is literally the first time me going back to season 1 in almost a year. Okay, so it was like watching it again for the first time, but not really, because I knew exactly what was going to happen. But there were certain things that I noticed that I had not noticed before, and these motherfucking red bricks were one of them. All right, Because there ain't a red brick to be found in Wentworth now, if you ask me. I can't remember seeing a red brick. Anyway, as she's walking into the prison, she's getting flashbacks, and we see her looking frightened. You know what I'm saying? And then the flashback is over. We're back in the halls of Wentworth. For the first time, this is it. We're inside the halls of Wentworth. And B's looking around. She's literally looking at everything. She's looking at the lights. She's looking at all the little things. The heater, the keys. Let me just say that the keys, I always say this, but I mean it. The keys, I love the sound of the keys. All the little danglies, this is it right here. This picture, this is the little grouping of items that makes this sound when the guards are walking that I love so much. Anyway, she's looking at all of these things, right? And then we see Vera for the first time walking across the hall. You know what I'm saying? Her and B make quick eye contact. And then we see Fletcher down yonder in the hall for the first time, and he is with a prisoner who I think is so pretty. So this inmate is looking at B. She reminds me of like some type of a lion, you know what I'm saying? Like this wild, beautiful animal with all of this hair and these facial features. I love this girl's face. It's a shame that we only see her in this one little clip. So anyway, she's looking at B. Smith dead in the eyes, and then she proceeds to pee on herself. And then she smiles. She smirks at B. Smith like, yeah, bitch, I peed on myself. And I was like, why'd she do it? And then Fletcher sees her that she peed on herself, and he's like, oh, for Christ's sake, Shawnee. So her name is Sharnie. All these years, I had no idea that's what this bitch's name was. So anyway, B walks into the intake room. So she walks into the intake room. The peed on girl goes into the strip search room with Fletcher, and that's that. So in the intake room, she's getting her mugshots taken. The lights flash in her face, and she gets another flashback. Now, B. Smith is in a garage with a sports utility vehicle, and she's pacing back and forth talking about, oh shit. And then she snaps out of the flashback. She's now in the intake office, and we see Mr. Jackson for the very first time. And when I saw him, I was like, oh my God. He looks like a fucking teenager. He looks like he's 13 years old. Because, you know, all of these characters were full-blown adults when they started filming the show, okay? Why is Will Jackson over here looking like he's 14? I don't understand. So anyway, he's asking her the basic intake questions. What is your date of birth? Are you on any medications? Who is your next of kin? You know what I'm saying? When he asks her that question, a light bulb goes on. It's like she remembered her daughter. She's got a daughter. So she's like, Debbie, I need to speak to my daughter, Debbie. And then she gets up like a fucking lunatic and walks out of the intake room. Hey, hello, you are in jail. You can't just walk out freely. I mean, in Wentworth you can, but still, you can't. Anyway, she walks out of the fucking door, the room, the intake room. Mr. Jackson is right behind her. He sees Fletcher, and he calls out for Fletcher, and he's like, Fletch, grab her. You know what I'm saying? So Fletcher grabs her like, bitch, you ain't going nowhere. And he's like holding her. Will comes and he's telling her, you know, calm down. And B starts struggling because they're grabbing her. You know what I'm saying? What would you do if all of a sudden you've got two men grabbing you? You're going to fucking struggle and try to break free. Prison or not. So she's struggling trying to break free. And then Vera sees the struggle and she comes out to investigate. So she's like, you know, Will, what's her name? What's her name? And then you see in one of the shots, Fletcher looking like annoyed by Vera, asking what's the prisoner's name. You know what I'm saying? And they're not really answering her. So she's going from asking Will to asking Fletcher. You could see she's like, hello, why are you motherfuckers not answering me? And then she calmly again asks Will, what is the prisoner's name? And Will tells her, B. Smith. He kind of screamed it out, you know? But Vera remained calm the entire time. This scene right here is the moment that I knew that Vera was like the pendeja of the guards. Pendeja means like a punk. So basically, she's the guard that nobody respects, and you could see it. It's made clear in this scene because she's asking them over and over again, what is this bitch's name? And they're not answering her. Vera's like, we're gonna have to sedate her. She calls out for medical. The fucking doctor comes with a syringe with the liquid that's gonna sedate B. Smith. And B's like, you know, yelling out, please help me. Get your hands off me. Please stop it. I want to speak to Debbie. And the doctor comes. He gives her the needle. She shuts the fuck up. She stops screaming and fussing on the floor. And she passes the fuck out. You know what I'm saying? End of scene. The opening credits roll for the very first time. okay? So we see everything. We see the guards' feet, we see various inmates, we see gates, we see lights, we see all the opening credits, and at the end of the opening credits, for the very first time, meanwhile, I've literally watched these opening credits 1,000 times, and I never noticed this. Fan mail to Frankie Doyle. Who the hell knew that that was in those credits? Because I didn't. The opening credits finished, and now we're inside Wentworth. So in this scene, we are in the yard. For the first time, we're seeing the yard. And I noticed that the geometrical heart is not on the walls in the yard. So I'm going to be watching out because I want to see, when do we first see this geometrical heart? When does the geometrical heart first present itself to us on the show? I'm going to find out. The circles, those circles within the circles were there from the beginning. Anyway, so we're in the yard for the first time. The inmates are there. The guards are there. There's some guards that I've never noticed before, like this one right here, this blonde bitch. Who the fuck are you? They're walking, and Vera's talking to her, like, how you doing? Are you all right? You know what I'm saying? A lot of women find it overwhelming on their first night. But, you know, we have a peer worker. Her name is Liz Birdsworth, and she'll introduce you to the women. You know what I'm saying? So as they're walking, and Vera's telling her this, B sees Doreen. We see Doreen for the first time. So she sees this woman with this kid, and she's like, it sparks her memory. And she's like, she's got a daughter of her own. You know what I'm saying? So it sparks her memory, and she asks Vera, when can I speak to my daughter? And Vera's like, all the numbers have to be put on a call list, and I'll organize it. You know what I'm saying? You could call her after lunch. And B's like, thanks, Vera. And Vera's like, this fucking bitch. Doesn't she see that I'm dressed as a guard? You know what I'm saying? And she's like, it's Miss Bennett. You know what I'm saying? Like, don't call me by my first name. So the next scene is Vera and B walking into H1, right? And Vera's showing her the basics as B stands by, watching, holding her basket of belongings, right? So Vera's like, all right, this is the front door, which is really a gate. You know what I'm saying? She's like, it gets locked every night, but you know, feel free to roam around the unit. And B is like, with the other women, they're not locked in their cells. And Vera's like, yeah, that's right. She continues the tour. She's like, that's the panic button. If there's any trouble, you press it. This is the lounge. The kitchen, there's a kettle, coffee, tea. The sugar is rationed, but feel free to, you know, watch some TV and make yourself a cuppa in your free time. That's your cell. The count is in half an hour, then lunch. Work will be allocated to you on Monday. And Vera goes to leave. So B is like, you know, can I please get a uniform? And Vera tells her, you can keep your clothes while you're here on remand. And B's like, I'd prefer a uniform. Thank you very much. And Vera's like, all right, I'll have one sent over. So Vera leaves, and B is left alone in the unit. And so looking at the unit, it looks so small and different, you know? I mean, I know that it's going to be different, clearly, because after season 3 and the fire, they ended up having to rebuild the prison. And in real life, after season 3, like come season 4, they had a whole new filming location. So clearly it's going to look different. But still, I was just like, wow, such a difference. You know, B's there. She's just standing there for a couple of seconds. And then she's like, all right, fuck it. I'm going to go into my cell. She goes to her cell door to open the door. She opens the door. She opens the door and she finds 2 naked women laying on her bed, okay, enjoying each other's company. So she sees these 2 naked ass women, you know, having a great time on her bed, and you know, she's like, oh shit, I'm sorry, I thought. And then that was it. You know, she didn't get another word out. One of the women that are laying down on the bed, who we later find out is Frankie Doyle. So Frankie tells her, hey, it's all yours when we're done. And she's slapping Kim's ass and thighs. Kim is the other woman that's there. So they start laughing, and B still hasn't left. And Frankie's like, you want to watch? Do you like to watch? And B goes to leave, and then Frankie tells her, oh, don't go now. And then she licks her hands, right? Her like whole entire hand. She licks it really good and tells her, don't go now. I'm just getting started. And she proceeds to insert her moistened hand into the poon of Kim Chang, all right? She's looking B. Smith dead in the eyes while she's doing this, and she's smiling. And then B closes the door. And I was just like, yo. When I saw that scene, I was like, I don't know who this bitch is, because at that moment, you don't know that it's Frankie Doyle just yet. I was like, I don't know who she is, but I like her. I like her a lot. So the next thing is B. She's sitting at the table, you know what I'm saying, with her head in her basket of belongings, waiting for these women to be done in her cell. when all of a sudden Frankie comes out. You know, she goes up to B. Smith and she's like, you know, nice color, your hair. Do you do it yourself? And B's like, yeah, I'm a hairdresser. So Frankie's like, you are? When are you open for business? And B's like, I don't have any of my things. You know what I'm saying? Like her tools, her hair cutting tools. And Frankie's like, all you need is a good pair of hands. So Frankie's flirting with B from jump. Frankie asks her, what's your name? B tells her B, and Frankie does the infamous line, B. Like, she makes fun of her name, and she introduces herself as Frankie. Then Kim comes. She introduces Kim to B. Smith. You know what I'm saying? So now we know that the two women that were in the room are Frankie Doyle and Kim Chang, who are a couple, okay? They're in love. Maybe Kim is in love with Frankie. I don't know if Frankie was ever really in love with Kim, to be completely honest. Perhaps. Who knows? When Frankie tells her, what's your name, Red, right? She's calling her Red because B. Smith has long, red, curly hair. So this was the birth of the nickname for B, which is Red, which only Frankie calls her that. So, you know, they all introduce each other, as they're getting, like, introducing one another, the rest of the women of H1 are now walking in. So Frankie tells them, we got a new roommate, girls. And we see first Doreen and Kaya, the same woman and child that B. Smith saw in the yard. And then we see a blonde woman with curly hair come in. And she says to B, look, I'm sorry I wasn't here, love. They should have told me. This is Doreen and this is Kaya. Doreen is the woman and Kaya is the child that B. Smith saw in the yard, right? So she's like, this is Doreen and this is Kaya, and I'm Liz, the PIA worker, and I'm here to show you the ropes and make sure you don't get into any trouble. So B's just looking like, what the fuck is going on? Why is there a little girl up in this bitch? You know what I'm saying? And Liz asks B, are you okay? And B says, can I go to my room now? So now they're in B. Smith's cell. Liz, Doreen, Kaya, and B. Doreen is being mad nosy, looking all up in B's basket of belongings. And I remember thinking, why is she being so damn nosy? You know what I'm saying? But whatever. So Liz is like, you know, it's a bit stock, but you'll make it your own. And Dora's like, what'd they pinch you for? While she's saying this, she's pulling out a photograph of B. Smith's daughter, Debbie. And B sees her doing this. So B takes the picture away from Doreen. Like, you got a lot of nerve grabbing my shit, bitch. She doesn't say this. This is what I'm saying. But she takes the picture away. B looks at the picture of her daughter, and she gets a flashback of Debbie yelling out, Mom, Mom, let go of my mom. And the cops are holding her back. Debbie's in hysterics. This is the flashback. So now she's snapped out of it. We're back in the cell, and B's looking at the picture. And Doreen asks herself, who's that, your daughter? And B's like, yeah, her name is Debbie. And Liz was like, oh, lovely. And Doreen is like, you know, she can visit. And B's like, nah, prison's no place for kids. Meanwhile, Doreen is standing there with a child in her arms, all right? So Doreen is like, what you said, bitch? And B's like, no, I didn't mean it in that way. And Doreen is like, you're a stuck-up bitch. And she walks out. Those were her words. She called her a stuck-up bitch. I didn't just throw that in there. And B is like, you know, I wasn't judging her. And Liz is like, no, don't worry. Don't take it personally. She's giving up her ciggies, and it's like walking on eggshells. Then on the speaker, we hear for the first time, attention compound, count will commence in 10 minutes. So anyway, Liz is telling her now the ropes. So you got to be standing by your door in 10 minutes for the head count. You know what I'm saying? I'd leave the door open, or the girls get a little shitty. They think you don't trust them. And don't borrow anyone else's shit without asking, all right? But if Frankie wants any of your shit, don't argue. Just give it to her. You know what I'm saying? And then she goes to walk out, and then she turns back around, and she goes, oh, wait, you know the panic button by the front door? And B's like, yeah. And Liz is like, don't ever press it. And then Liz walks off, and B is left in her cell. So remember, Vera told B. Smith, if there is some shit going down, you press the panic button. But now we have the PIA worker inmate, Liz Birdsworth, telling B. Smith, don't ever fucking press the panic button. So it's like, who do you believe? You know what I'm saying? What do you do in this situation? For me, when I first saw this, I was like, I'm going to go ahead and believe what Liz says, and I'm not going to touch the panic button. Meanwhile, the next scene is we see a monitor, and we see the women in the dining hall through some CCTV footage. And then we see a woman watching the screen. A really fucking good-looking woman with dimples, okay? She's watching the screen. It's Meg Jackson. It's the governor of Wentworth, okay? And she's looking and she's listening to the chatter of the women. We see Frankie, and for the first time, we see Boomer. She's holding a slice of buttered bread, okay, or toast. And when I saw this, my thought was, oh, bread. Luke Kelly, my precious baby love, loves bread, okay? So this woman who we still don't know is the governor, nor do we know her name, but I'm over here just talking like, you know, y'all know who I'm talking about, but we know who she is. So she's watching, this woman is watching and she's listening to what's being said in the lunchroom. So we see the women getting online for food. We see B. Smith, and she is standing on the line to get food. And for B's first prison feast, the menu is fruit cocktail, okay, sliced peaches, or they could be pears in some type of a liquid, okay, flavorless beans, and buttered bread. That's all that I see here. B is moving a little slow, you know, so the women are moving around her getting their food, and she just, you know, she gets her utensils. The food that she's put on her tray is just a slice of toast bread, okay, doesn't really look like it's that toasted, and some fruit cocktail. And she's got this silver cutlery, which I don't think should be in prisons, but that's neither here nor there. We see Mr. Jackson, Will Jackson, and so he asks B, you settling in all right? And she's like, yeah. And he tells her, we've put your daughter on the call list. You can join the phone queues after lunch. Liz will show you. And B sighs with relief. And she's like, oh, thank you. And Will nods and he smiles. And you know, he's a nice fucking guy from the very beginning, Will was. He was never an asshole. Never. So B takes a tray and she's looking around the damn lunchroom. She don't know where the fuck to sit. It's like the first day of high school. What table do you sit at? So Frankie's like, hey, Red. And she motions for B to come sit, you know, with the women from her unit. So B sits down next to Doreen, and, you know, she's looking at Doreen like, oh, God. And Doreen, like, semi-rolls her eyes at B because she hasn't forgotten what B. Smith said, that prison is no place for kids. So they're talking, you know, they're all just talking shit, the women, about how they had a basketball game last week, and Mr. Jackson was there playing with them, and he was in his shorts, and the women lost because they couldn't focus on how good he looked with his shorts. So he can hear all of this in the background. Now we're back in that little room. So fucking Meg, the governor of the prison, is there listening. And Vera comes in. She's telling Meg, you know, Liz seems to have taken B under her wing. She was really distressed. I think she'll settle in okay when she's talked to her daughter. And Meg she's looking annoyed. And she's like, Vera, I think you should stop making friends with the prisoners and start focusing on what's really going on. And she points towards the women in the lunchroom. And Meg is like, call the staff into my office. And Vera's like, yes, governor. That's when we find out that Meg, this woman, is the governor of Wentworth Correctional Center. Her name is Meg Jackson, okay? So, Meg, the governor, walks out into the cafeteria where the women are there, laughing, yapping. And Frankie's like, Mrs. Jackson, hungry are ya? You want a sharesies? You good? And then the women laugh, you know what I'm saying? B. Smith doesn't know what the fuck to do. She just is sitting there eating her bread, minding her business. And Meg is like, hey, your old roommate, Sharni, she's back inside. And Frankie's like, oh, is she? And Meg is like, yeah. And then Frankie's like, she must have missed the food, eh? And Meg is like, mm-hmm. It's what we're famous for. And she's like, poor old thing. She pissed herself in processing. And you wouldn't believe what slipped out. That was a lot of gear. Don't know anything about that, do you, Frankie? And Frankie looks at Meg, smiles, and says, bitch, why would I? And Meg is like, oh, well, eat it while it's hot. And then she smiles, and she walks away. Now, when I first saw this, and I saw her smile, I was like, wow. First of all, Meg Jackson has got these dimples that I was just like, wow, her smile is fantastic. And then when she walked away, she gave me the super gay vibes. And I was like, first of all, this walk that this woman has. I like her walk. I like her smile. I like her dimples. The women of Wentworth are some of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. You know, Frankie's left to exhale and look stressed out. And then she looks at B. Smith. You know what I'm saying? So basically, we find out here that Frankie, you know, is bringing in gear and selling it to the women. So now she has no more gear, being that they found it on this Sharni chick, which was the one that peed herself in the beginning in front of B. Smith, okay? So Frankie looks at B and she gets an idea and she's like, hey, my room after lunch. And B's like, I'm sorry. And Frankie's like, dessert. So B's left looking worried. Meanwhile, in the governor's office, they're having a senior staff meeting. It's Vera, Will, Fletcher, two other fucking guards who I don't know who the hell they are, and Erica Davidson is in this meeting as well. This is the first time we see Erica. So basically, Meg is talking to them, telling them that, you know, we got to find a way to stop Frankie from bringing in gear. You know what I'm saying? So what we're going to do is we're going to put Sharni in the slot for a couple of weeks and see what she has to tell us. So Meg is just like, you know, we have to catch her out there in the act. And Erica's like, listen, I've been working closely with Frankie and she's clean. Are you sure she's behind this? And Meg is like, Erica, do you think someone who's pinned half the day could run this operation? We don't need Sharni's confession to know that Frankie Doyle is behind this. And so Will Jackson is like, well, what do you want us to do? And Meg is like, I want you to ride her. Box visits, spot checks, restricted privileges. We're going to put her out of business. And Erica's like, yo, you ride her hard and she's going to rise to the challenge. Isn't it smarter to negotiate? And Meg smiles at Erica with those dimples and she says, we don't negotiate with prisoners, bitch. And then she smiles at her again and then she tells everyone, get the fuck out. So they all leave, but Meg stops Will Jackson from leaving. So all the guards leave and now it's just Meg and Will Jackson. And Meg is, you know, telling Will, yo, that Erica, she really pisses me off. I mean, she's not even an officer. She shouldn't even be in these meetings. Will is like, you know, come here. And he hugs her. And this is when we find out that they're an item, all right? So he's basically telling her, calm down. You know what the doctor said. This isn't good. Stress isn't good for you. We'll talk about this some more when we get home. You know what I'm saying? We could talk about it in bed while we're making love and making babies. In this moment, they're hugging. And all of a sudden, Fletcher literally barges into her office. This motherfucker don't even knock or nothing. And he's like, oh, my bad. He sees them hugging and he's like, oops, I'm sorry. I'll come back. And Meg is like, nah, it's fine. Will was just leaving, you know what I'm saying? As Will is leaving, Fletcher asks him, are we still on for the game tomorrow? And Will smiles at him and says, yes. With this interaction, we know that Will and Fletcher are not just co-workers, but they're also friends outside of work, right? So Will leaves, Meg closes the door, and she asks Fletcher, what do you want? You know what I'm saying? And Fletcher's like, you know, here's this report. There are 2 more remands coming in, blah, blah, blah. And Fletcher all of a sudden just stops talking and he's just staring at this bitch. And she looks at him and she's like, is there something else? And Fletcher was like, it's pretty inappropriate behavior for the governor, don't you think? He's referring to her and Will, you know, kissing and hugging in her office. And Meg is like, well, if you had a note, Mr. Fletcher, you would have saved yourself the embarrassment. Meg's secretary comes in, Fletcher leaves, Meg smiles. You know what I'm saying? So the next scene is the women online to use the phones. You know what I'm saying? And when I saw this, again, I was like, wow. Look at how different the phone area looks, okay? It's just totally different. We already know why the difference is, but it's okay to point out how different it looks. So B is asking Liz, how long do we have on these phone calls? And Liz is like, 12 minutes, and then the phone's cut off. And if no one answers, you got to go to the end of the line. And so then all of a sudden, Frankie shows up and she gets in B's face and she's like, yo, I've been waiting for you. I hate fucking waiting. And Liz tells her, ease up, Frankie. She's a newbie and she's into blokes, which means guys. And Frankie's like, I don't care who she fucks. And then she tells Liz, Kim's looking for ya. And Liz is like, yeah, well, I'm minding a spot for Doreen. And Frankie's like, you were. Off you go. And Liz looks at B and says, I'll see you in a bit. B nods and that's it. So Frankie hands B a piece of paper and says, visitor's form, I've filled it out for you. I just need for you to sign it. And B is like, what for? And Frankie's like, tomorrow you meet your friend Craig and collect your housewarming present. And B is like, what present? And Frankie's like, well, it's not a fucking cake. And B looks confused and scared, but she's like, look, you know, she's like, I don't know what the fuck you want me to do. I can't help you. And Frankie's like, hey, do you want to talk to your daughter or not? And B's like, yeah. And so Frankie's like, hey, Booms, you got anybody waiting? And Boomer comes down the hallway, picking her nose, you know what I'm saying? And Frankie tells her, Red is in no hurry. Bring your people in. So she's basically telling Boomer, go gather the women because B is not going to be fucking calling nobody. Not today. Because if she don't sign these papers, she's never making another phone call again. So Frankie looks at Red and she tells her, listen, Red, I'm all about fun. The girls know that. It's how things work in my unit. They also know that if you want to survive up in this bitch, if you want to eat, sleep, or speak to your kids, you'll do what I say. And then Frankie pushes B back and says, back it up. So B looks concerned. Boomer comes with all the women, you know what I'm saying? Frankie pushes B and the women get in front of B. That's it. No phone call for B Smith. So now B's in her cell having flashbacks to the night of her arrest. You know what I'm saying? Debbie crying and screaming. And in the flashback, we see someone knocking on her door, and it's the police. And they're telling B, you know, come with me. Back in the cell, the flashback is over. Doreen shows up. And B is like, listen, I honestly didn't mean to offend you. And Doreen is like, listen, whatever, it don't matter. Just whatever Frankie is asking you to do, just do it. And B is like, I can't. And Doreen is like, yo, Frankie is the top dog ever since Jacs left. And B is like, wait, who's Jacs? And Doreen is like, Vinnie Holt's wife. She's in the slot right now, but she'll be back. You know what I'm saying? And B is like, listen, I just want to talk to my daughter. And Doreen is like, it sucks when you can't see them, eh? And B is like, yup. And Dora's like, I miss Kaya when she goes to visit her grandma. And B is like, so you understand. It's the way that I left her. I just want to know that my little girl's okay. And this thing that Frankie wants me to do, I don't know how. And Doreen is like, listen, you got to choose sides in here. Frankie will look out for you. She's famous. Did you see her on the telly? And B's like, yeah, I actually felt sorry for her. And Doreen is like, don't ever tell her that. Look, if you want to speak to your daughter, sign the form. And Doreen leaves. And B's left contemplating. But in the end, she signs the fucking form. So now it's the next day in H1. And B Smith is sitting down in the unit watching The Price is Right. Okay? I didn't know they gave The Price is Right in Australia. So she's watching the fucking shit. And the attention compound happens. And it's like, attention compound, visiting will commence in 10 minutes. Frankie comes out of her cell, looks at Red and tells her, you're on. Like, it's showtime, bitch. Go get me this gear. So Vera is now walking B into the VI room, right? And as they're walking, Vera's asking her, so who you seeing today? Who you here to see? And B's like, oh, just a friend. And so the visitor door opens, you know what I'm saying? And B is looking around. She's seeing a bunch of people. She don't know who the fuck it is that she's there to see. All she knows is that his name is Craig. Shout out to Craig. Your name was in the very first episode of Wentworth. How special is that? Because not everybody's name is said in Wentworth. They said your name. Vera opens the door and B's looking around and she sees this dude who she thinks is the guy. But it's not him. You know what I'm saying? She goes to him to say what's up and he's like looking at her like, who the fuck are you, bitch? I'm not here to see you. You don't look like my wife or my daughter or whoever the fuck it was that he was there to see. So she gets a little worried, you know what I'm saying? And then she hears some dude clearing his throat. And he gets B. Smith's attention this way. So she looks at him. She realizes, okay, this is Craig. So she goes to him. So B and the dude, B goes to Craig and they hug. And he goes to kiss her. And she gets startled and grossed out. And she pulls him back. Like, what the fuck you doing? Don't put your mouth on my mouth. I didn't authorize that shit. And so he's like, yo, you're a fucking stupid dumbass bitch. Now sit the fuck down and do as I say. So this is what he says. His exact words are, you stupid fucking bitch. Sit the fuck down. That's what he said. I'm not making that up. So they sit down. And then Craig tells her, in 20 minutes, I'm going to be leaving. And we're going to try that again. And this time, you're not going to fuck it up, right? And then he opens his mouth a little bit and he shows her this little red balloon that's filled with the gear. You know, you look at these little balloons and it looks like there's hardly nothing in there. How many people are going to buy that? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. How much money could you make off of that? I don't think it's a lot. Probably it is because it's prison. But it's a small amount of gear. Like, how many... Anyway, whatever. It's not the point. So they're sitting there. B nods at him. You know, she understands what he has told her that needs to be done. And so for the next 10 minutes, they're mindlessly yapping. Some suspenseful music is playing in the background. And the 10 minutes pass. This is it. This is the time. They get up and he tells her, try to look like you're enjoying it this time, eh? And they kiss. He slips her the balloon. Vera sees them kiss. He leaves. Vera comes to get B and they go for the whole strip search. Now they're in the strip search room. And Vera was like, I didn't think you were the kind to have a bit on the side. She's telling her this while B's getting butt-ass naked. And, you know, B's just looking at her, undressing. She hasn't said a word. Vera, how was your first night in H Block? And B says really quickly and really low the word, you know, it was good. Vera was like, any trouble from Frankie? And B nods, nope. Vera looks at B a little suspiciously because B's not saying a fucking word. You know what I'm saying? So at this point, when I first saw it, I'm saying to myself, did she swallow the balloon or not? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it in her mouth? Because When I watched it this time, I saw the moment in which she swallows the balloon. She swallows the balloon the second the balloon gets into her mouth. When I first saw this episode, however, I didn't notice that. And so I was wondering, did she swallow this balloon or not? Because it makes you feel like maybe she didn't. So Vera's looking at B a little suspiciously. B's taking off her bra, and Vera sees bruises on B's arms. And she looks at B. And B looks like she's like so uncomfortable because she's in there with these strange women butt-ass naked. So Vera's telling her the strip searches get easier with time, you know what I'm saying? And Vera checks B's hair. She's checking behind her ears. She's checking her hair, you know what I'm saying? And then Vera tells B to open her mouth. And in this moment, I was like, oh shit, this is it. That balloon's gonna come flying out of her mouth. But it doesn't. It doesn't. The balloon does not come flying out of her mouth. You don't see it in that mouth. So she's, opening her mouth. She's lifting her tongue. She's moving that shit around. Everything is all clear. Meanwhile, back in the yard, Vera's bringing B back to the unit. You know what I'm saying? And Frankie's in the yard looking on. She looks so good just watching. You know what I'm saying? Frankie was my first Wentworth crush before Luke Kelly. I've said this before. So Vera's like, has Liz mentioned our programs to you? You should talk to her about it. Some women find that it helps to pass the time. And in this moment, Frankie and B make eye contact. And with their eyes and their heads, they speak to one another. Frankie nods at her like, did you get it, bitch? And B nods back at her like, I got it. So Vera walks B up to Erica Davidson, who's in the yard as well. Basically, Vera is telling Erica, I was talking to B about your programs and yada, yada, yada. In the midst of this, Frankie joins the bunch. And she looks at Erica and she's like, Miss Davidson. And Erica's like, Frankie. So Frankie makes a comment about Erica's shoes being wasted on her uniform. You know what I'm saying? And Erica, is just there like, it's one of the perks of my job. I don't have to wear a fucking uniform. Bitch, I don't know about Erica in this moment because I'm like, do I like her? Do I not? I just don't know. Then Vera tells B, you can go to your unit or you can hang out in the yard. You can do whatever the fuck you want. You're free to go at this point. And then all of a sudden we hear Meg and she's like, hey, Vera, has the prisoner been searched? She came out of nowhere, Meg did. And Vera's like, of course, Governor. Like a little annoyed. Like, what do you think? I don't know how to do my job? Of course I searched the prisoner. So Frankie walks away looking concerned the second that Meg entered their bubble, okay? B looks startled as fuck. Meg goes straight to the face of B and she's like, g'day, you want to open up your mouth for me, please? And she goes, open it and stretch it wide. So, like, put your fingers in your mouth and stretch that shit. B does as she's told. She puts her fingers in her mouth and she stretches that shit open. And Meg is like, go wider, thank you. Tongue that way and that way. And B looks fucking hilarious in this thing. So Meg is like, lift your head back. Frankie's watching. And Meg Jackson is just inspecting the shit out of B Smith's mouth. You know what I'm saying? And in the midst of this, you see Vera giving Meg this look as like, she's so annoyed by the fact that she's double checking her. Meanwhile, Vera already did it. Like, am I not competent, bitch? Why did you hire me? Why am I your deputy governor if you're going to go behind me and do my job after me? So Meg is making B do all types of shit. Lift your head, move your tongue, cough. Frankie's looking worried. And Meg don't find shit. And she tells Vera, see me in my office. Thanks. Vera leaves. Frankie goes to B and tells her, yo, did you get it or not? Because, there was nothing there. And B's like, yeah. And Frankie's like, oh, shit. And B's like, what? Did I swallow? And I'm like, bitch, how the fuck you don't know if you swallowed the balloon or not? Of course you swallowed the balloon. So Frankie's like, come on, let's go. So now the next scene is in the bathrooms and we see Boomer sitting down on the toilet bowl. And this is the first and the last time that I remember seeing this bathroom with these toilet bowls. So in the bathrooms, Frankie's like, come on. And she tells Boomer to piss off and Boomer's on the toilet taking a shit. So Frankie takes B to the toilet and she's telling her, make yourself throw up, bitch, because if that you got drugs in your stomach. And if it bursts, you're dead meat. And I don't really give two shits about you. I care more about the gear. This is the impression that I got. None of those words were said. So she's making B puke, and she does. She throws up, the balloon comes out. It's pretty disgusting, and then Frankie tells her, grab the balloon. So B goes into her puke, grabs the balloon, the red balloon, and in that moment, we hear Meg Jackson. She's like, hey, do you want to hand that over? Thanks. Meg Jackson is so calm when she bursts in on people. You know, Frankie hears her and jumps into one of the toilet stalls and sits down, scared to death. So Meg looks at Vera and she's like, Vera, grab the balloon that's drenched in puke. Okay? Vera puts on gloves. She grabs the balloons. She's looking at B. Smith like, damn, bitch, I would have never thought. You know what I'm saying? And Meg tells B, stand up for us, B. She handcuffs B. Smith and she asks B, you have anything to say? B don't say a word, but we hear Boomer say, yeah, can I have some bloody privacy? Because she want to take a shit in peace. Who doesn't? Who wants to push out their shit and you got people in your face? Get the fuck out. So Meg walks out with B and points at Frankie like, that's right, bitch. You ain't getting away with nothing no more. So now we're in the governor's office and it's Meg and B, Fletcher and Vera up in this bitch. And Meg is like, there is nothing in your file that indicates you're a user. So we're assuming you're trafficking for Frankie Doyle. You say Doyle's name and I'll put you in protection. There'll be no reprisals from the women. You say nothing and this is going to go on your record and it's not going to look good for you at your hearing. And then B stands there, she ain't saying jack shit. And Meg is like, she's like, oh, you could just say something. And B is like, I don't know anything about it. And Meg was like, I was watching your visit on the CCTV. You did not know that man. And B is like, yeah, he's my boyfriend. And Meg looks at her like, you lying little fucking bitch. You know what I'm saying? And she says, put her in the slot, see how she goes. So Fletcher takes B and puts her in the fucking slot. And Vera goes to leave, but Meg stops her. And Meg tells her, Vera, you've been my deputy governor now for how long? And Vera's like, 2 years. And she's like, yeah. And before me, it was Dalton that was governor. Yeah? 4? And Vera's like, 1 year. And Meg is like, and before that, it was Peters. And Vera's like, yes, he lasted 18 months. And Meg is like, right. And all that time you were deputy. You've watched a parade of governors come through that door. It must have been very, very difficult for you when I got this job. And Vera's like, of course not. And Meg is like, so then why are you making me look bad? And Vera's like, it's not what I'm doing. And Meg is like, so you're just not up to the job. Is that what I'm hearing? Then Meg goes, listen, just go get the dog squad because I'm going to order a ramp at the prison, which is like a raid of the prison. You know what I'm saying? And Vera is like, yes, governor. And she leaves. So Meg is basically asking Vera, like, you're doing everything that you can to make me look stupid. But that's not what Vera's doing. I don't believe that that's what Vera was doing. So now the dog squad arrives. It's cops with dogs in the prison. A code blue has been announced. Code blue, I guess, means, you know, the cops are here. And the cops and the dogs are walking in the halls. B is in the slot, and she hears a voice. This is like a musical montage, right? So we saw the cops with the dogs coming into the prison, getting ready to fuck shit up. And then we see B in the slot, and we hear a woman's voice singing. He used to give me roses, is the first line of the song. When I first saw this episode, I didn't know what the fuck she was singing. I thought she was just singing a regular song. Later on, through you guys in the comments, I came to find out that she's actually singing the original theme music from the show Prisoner. In H1, the dogs arrive and the cops are doing a raid of the cells. We still hear the voice singing in the background, you know what I'm saying? The dogs are barking all up in Kaya's face. You know, the Doreen is holding her. They take Kaya's teddy bear and throw it to the floor. They're stepping on Debbie's picture. Meg gets a call. No drugs were found. You know what I'm saying? We're back in the slot with B. Smith, still hearing the singing. And then we see the woman who's singing. And when I first saw her, I was like, she looks like Martha Stewart. You know what I'm saying? A lot like Martha Stewart. I remember when I saw this, I assumed this must be Jacs. Because Jacs, they said, was in the slot. B is in the slot. This has to be Jacqueline Holtz. And I was right. So the next scene is B in the slot. You know what I'm saying? And Will comes to bring her a breakfast tray of some slimy looking fucking eggs and wet looking toast. All right, that's been overly buttered. And so she looks at it like it's gross. You know what I'm saying? And he basically was like, you know, how was your first night here? And she's like, you try sleeping on this bed. He laughs and asks her, would you like a cigarette? She's like, yeah. And they go outside to smoke the cigarette. So I think this is the only time I've ever seen Will smoking a cigarette. So B is like, how long will I be in here? And Will is like, it's up to the governor. And B is like, is this the good cop routine? And Will is like, I'm not a cop. And Will is like, look, between me and you, you're doing the right thing. They'll keep grilling you, but that's nothing to what the woman will do to you if you talk. And B is like, the governor said that I'd be safe, I'd be put in protection. And Will is like, yo, if they want to get somebody, they'll do it, even if it's just in here. And he's pointing at his head. Like, if all they can do is fuck with your mind, then they're going to do that. So don't snitch. And I was like, you see, he is a good guy. He's warning her. He's warning her. B takes a pull of the cigarette. She starts coughing, and Will is like, you're not a smoker, are you? And she's like, nah, I just came out for the fresh air. And they both laugh, and that was that. So in the next scene, we see Liz pissed off, and she's talking to Meg about the raid. You know what I'm saying? And she's like, yo, they were out of line. They were bang out of order, and they got a lot of fucking nerve. You know what I'm saying? They took our blankets, they took our clothes, they even took this little fucking girl's teddy bear. You know what I'm saying? Kaya's teddy bear. And Meg is like, listen, they must have picked up a scent then. And Liz is like, yo, stop it. Throw me a bone. I'm trying to help you out. And Meg is like, yeah, I know. She's like, look, I managed to set up that meeting with Mr. Channing for you next week. That's your parole, all right? Now, you've been doing a great job as peer worker, and I'm going to make sure they take that into account. And Liz is like, I didn't come here for brownie points. I'm looking after the girls. So Meg is basically telling her, listen, I need for you to snitch and let me know that it's Frankie bringing in this gear. If you tell me this, if you snitch and you lied and you help me out, I'm going to make sure that you get your parole. And Liz is like, I ain't no snitch, bitch. Meg is like, no, I thought not. Well, I'll let you know how your meeting goes, but I'd keep my fingers crossed. So she's basically letting her know, parole won't be yours because you didn't help me. And so now you could kiss my ass. In this moment, Will Jackson is walking into the governor's office with B. Smith. You know what I'm saying? And Lizzie leaves. So Meg is like, bring her in, Mr. Jackson. So Meg is asking her how did it go last night. You know what I'm saying? Did you being in slot jog your memory? And Meg is like, look, the dog squad raided the prison last night because of you. And the women ain't happy. So if I send you back to that compound, you're going to have to deal with the repercussions. And women like you, you're a soft target. But if you tell me who you're trafficking for, you won't see that compound again. I'll put you in your own cell under protection for the rest of your stay here. And B. Smith is like, yeah, I'd prefer the company. And Meg is like, you be careful what you wish for. So now B is back in the halls of Wentworth, walking into the unit, into H1. All the women of H1 are there. Frankie, Liz, Doreen, Kim, Boomer. And there's another woman in there. We don't know who she is yet, but I know who she is, and it's Tony. It's Tony Good. B. Smith walks in. Frankie looks at her like, oh, hell no. You know what I'm saying? And then she walks up to B. Smith's face quite aggressively. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. She's going to hit her. But that's not what happens. Frankie goes, that was nicely played, Red. And then she walks away. So the women are happy. She did the right thing. She listened to Will Jackson. She didn't snitch. She did the right thing. Liz is like, good on you, B. And you hear, good work. And then you did the right thing. So everyone's giving her props for having done the right thing. And B calms the fuck down in this moment because now she knows that she's safe in H1. So the next scene is Erica, Fletcher, and Vera. And they're in what I'm guessing is like the staff employee lounge. It looks crazy in there. Vera, asks Fletcher, do you want some coffee? So she's giving herself and him some coffee. And they sit down and they're like talking about the women being quiet this morning. And Erica's like, oh, word, they're quiet, even Frankie. And I remember thinking, why are you asking so many questions about Frankie? Are you and Frankie having an affair? So the second Frankie said what she said about Erica's shoes, I knew Frankie liked Erica. But when Erica asked even Frankie, I was like, hold on. Erica likes Frankie as well. Why else would she be asking about her specifically? You know what I'm saying? They're there talking their shit, and in walks Meg Jackson. And she tells Fletcher, we're releasing Jacs Holt from the slot today. Everyone looks shocked. It was like, she's not supposed to be coming out for another week. Meg is like, yeah, I don't give a fuck. This is what it is. So Meg is letting Jacs Holt out of the slot early. She's trying to stir the pot. And, she walks away with her sexy ass walk. So Vera, Erica, and Fletcher, they all look at each other like, oh shit, it's gonna be on. Because Frankie and Jax got beef. Not enough time has passed for the shit to settle. So they're gonna fight. There's gonna be problems. So then the next scene is a close-up of a woman putting on some green eyeshadow and lipstick. This woman is Jacs Holt, all right? Being released from the slot. She's combing her hair. She's popping her collar, okay? She's trying to look her best to go back into general population. And while she's doing this, we see in the reflection of the mirror, Vera Bennett. And she's like, nice to be back in your own cell, huh, Jax? So she's not getting ready to go back into the unit. She's already in the fucking unit. She's getting ready inside her cell. That's what was happening. So the next scene is the dining hall, all right? All of the women are eating, chatting, laughing, and then all of a sudden, silence overcomes the women. And we see the doors open, and it's Jacqueline Holtz being brought into the fucking cafeteria. You know, so like all of her peoples are excited to see her. Everyone's excited to see Jacqueline Holtz except for the women that are sitting in the table of H1, all right? Nobody's smiling in that table. You know, Frankie looks pissed off and annoyed that this bitch is back. And so Meg is there as well. And Meg looks at Frankie, smiles. And Frankie's like, that bitch is playing with me. And I was like, mm-hmm. So on the lunch line is B. Smith. And, you know, Jax comes and cuts in front of B on the line. Jax gives B a tray and tells her, here you go, love. And B's like, thanks. And Jax is like, you must be Smith. And B is like, mm-hmm. And Jax is like, I'm Jacqueline Holt. You can call me Jax. And so Jack is like, I heard you caused some trouble for the screws. Good on you, love. Come and sit with me. We can have a natta. I don't know what that means, but I'm thinking it's a chat. You know what I'm saying? A natta. Anyway, so B's like, I think I've got to sit with the women from my unit. And Jack is like, it's a free country, but I won't take no for an answer. I'll do you a deal. We'll take this, and you go get me a cuppa. So that woman that was in the brawler with B. Smith, she's one of Jacqueline Holt's crew members. She takes B. Smith's tray along with her silver cutlery, okay, and goes to walk off while B goes to the tea and coffee station to make Jacqueline Holt a cuppa. So Jax says, Francesca won't mind, will ya? Jax tells Frankie, I heard you let down some of the women. You know how they get when you make promises you can't deliver? Never mind, I'm back. So she's basically telling her, you know, you got caught out there with the gear, and now these bitches is dying to get high, and they can't because you ain't shit. But I'm back. And I got this. So she's like, never mind, I'm back, right? So Frankie's like, you look older. And all the women start to laugh, right? And Jack is like, experience always wins, Francesca, in the end. B comes up to Jax in that moment and hands her the cuppa. And Jax tells her, oh, sorry, love. I didn't say. I don't take milk. And then Jax goes to sit at her table. Before she sits down, she says to Frankie, you made a big mistake framing me. Lost your temper again. Gets you into all sorts of trouble, Francesca. And B comes up to Jax with cup of tea number 2. Jax looks at the cup and then looks at B. Like, bitch, have you lost your damn mind? And then she tells her, the tide's out, love. And B looks at her and she's like, sorry? Jax is like, a bit more water? The women of H1, they're looking at what's happening and they're like, oh God, you know, here she goes with her shit. You know what I'm saying? And an observation in this moment was the lunchroom looks tiny. This fucking lunchroom looks tiny, okay? The area where you get your food looks so different. Anyway, whatever. So B goes to make cup of tea number 3. And as she does, she gets a flashback of her placing down a cup of coffee on a table. And so she brings Jax cup of tea number 3. And Jax is sitting down at this point. She looks at the cup and she says, too full. All the women start laughing because they know what she's doing. She's fucking with you. She's going to make you go back and forth 1,001 times. She's never going to drink the tea, okay? It's never going to be good enough for her. B gets a flashback. It's her giving Harry the cup, and Harry's like, oi, get in here. And B says, I'm not a dog, Harry. Harry then smacks the shit out of B, and she falls. So B takes Jax's cup and goes to, you know, do whatever it is, make her another cup. And then Liz gets up to go help B. And Jax is like, oi, Birdsworth, Smith's making it. And B's like, it's all right, I'll do it. So Liz goes to sit back down. B empties out some of the water from the cup and brings Jax cup of tea number 4, all right? Jax doesn't even look at the fucking cup. She's looking dead in Frankie's face and she says to B. Smith, mug's dirty. The women erupt in laughter again. But this time, something different happens. B does not move a muscle. And so Jack's like, well, go on. Move your ass. And B gets a flashback. She gets a flashback of Harry fucking her up. You know what I'm saying? Telling her, now move your fucking ass. So basically, Jax is doing the same thing to B. Smith that her abusive husband has been doing to her for years. Okay? So in this flashback, we see him dragging her, kicking her on the floor, you know what I'm saying? And just, you know, fucking her up. So back in the cafeteria, Jax is like, what are you waiting for? Because all this time, B didn't move a muscle. She's there having this flashback. And B says, no. Like, I'm not getting you your tea. And so Frankie looks at Jax like, that's right, bitch. And Jax looks at Frankie. And Jax says, I beg your pardon. And B's like, I'm not doing it. And Jax is like, ooh, we got a feisty one here, girls. What are you in here for, love? Parking fines? And the women start laughing. And B. Smith and this woman looks like she's trying her best to stay calm, right? So she's like, nah, I'm not here because of no damn parking tickets, all right? I'm here because of offense to administer substances, okay? Causing serious injury, conduct endangering life, grievous bodily harm, and attempted murder. So please, make your own tea. And the women all laugh and start cheering, you know what I'm saying? Because they're so excited that B just sunned Jacqueline Holt, you know what I'm saying? So Frankie's like, shut down by the new girl, eh? That's nice. And Jack says to Frankie, I had a long time to think about our reunion, Francesca. Been looking forward to it. Your time's over, Clitty Licker. We're coming to get ya. And I was like, yo, Jacqueline, watch your mouth, Clitty Licker. That sounds like a derogatory term to me, and I didn't like it, all right? Even though it's a fact. So this dramatic music is playing, and we see B. Smith in the next scene walking into the yard, okay? Because you got to walk through the yard in order to get to the unit, it seems, in this first season of Wentworth. So she's walking into the yard, and she's getting all these flashbacks again of Harry in a car tied up and exhaust fumes, and she's just there watching him slowly die. And B walks into her unit. Another flashback comes, and it's Debbie yelling out, Mom, Mom, are you in there? So in this next flashback, we basically get the gist of what happened. B. Smith tried to kill her husband by way of, she tried to suffocate him with the exhaust fumes, okay, of his vehicle. In the midst of this murder happening, B. Smith's daughter, Debbie, comes home and almost opens the garage door. B. Smith stops her and tells her, don't you come in here. Everything's fine. I'll be right out. Debbie ends up coming in through a side door and sees the whole thing happening. She sees her father with tape around his mouth, and he's in there. He's unconscious. He's dying, okay? So she starts screaming. B. Smith decides to abort mission. Debbie calls 911 and tells them, I think my dad might have tried to take his own life. So now we're back in B's cell. This sad-ass song starts playing, okay? And B's in her cell. The cell is a mess because remember the rage, so the ramp happened, so they left her room a mess. And she's looking for Debbie's picture. You know, it's going back and forth. It's going back and forth from the flashbacks to B in the cell frantically looking for the picture, you know what I'm saying? The EMTs taking Harry, they see the marks on his wrist and they suspect foul play, you know what I'm saying? Then we also see flashbacks of the cops coming to arrest B, and Debbie is screaming and crying with another officer holding her back. You know what I'm saying? And B is telling Debbie, go back inside. I'll be back. I promise. So now B's in the cell, still looking for the picture, when all of a sudden Liz and Doreen walk in. So Liz is like, B? And she hands her the picture of Debbie. And Liz tells her, Doreen found it. She fixed it up. We wanted it to be a bit of a surprise. You know what I'm saying? And then the music is playing. It was so sad. I'm going to put a link to this song in the description box down below so that you could hear the song that was playing in this moment, if you've not heard it already. So B. Smith smiles at them. You know what I'm saying? They smile at her. She sits down and she starts to cry, looking at the picture of the daughter. So that scene combined with the lyrics to the song that was playing was enough to make me cry. So Liz is like, oh, are you all right, love? Are ya? And B's crying, and Liz is like, it's all right, love. You know what I'm saying? And this scene right here was such a great scene because Liz is comforting B. Smith. Doreen is on the floor cleaning up B. Smith's ransacked room. You know what I'm saying? It was in this moment that I forgave Doreen for being so rude to B in the beginning, and I felt love for Lizzie. And I was like, you know, Lizzie is such a good woman, is such a good friend. This is the first scene where you see this whole family aspect of the women of Wentworth. You know what I'm saying? And I was just like, wow, this was nice. And so meanwhile, in the yard, Boomer's going around to Frankie's crew. You know what I'm saying? And she goes to Tony and she's telling Tony. Tony, she's also one of the women of H1. She's not seen much in this episode, but she's a character. So Boomer's telling her, it's on. Come on. I love how Boomer looks with this hairstyle parted down the middle. She looks so much meaner this way. You know what I'm saying? With this hair parted down the middle as opposed to the hairstyle that we know and love now. She looks badass this way. I love it. So Booms is passing the women shivs and they're looking at Jax. Jax's crew is on one side of the yard and Frankie's crew is on the other side of the yard. So now we're back in B's cell. It's Liz, B, and Doreen. And Liz is telling, B, those are pretty serious charges. Who was it? And B's like, I didn't do anything. My husband, he tried to kill himself. B gets another flashback. And it's the flashback of B and Debbie in the house waiting for Harry to get home after he spoke with the cops. You know what I'm saying? To make sure that all their stories are straight. You know what I'm saying? The story is that they've come up with is that Harry tried to take his own life. Okay? To keep B out of jail. So now, she's snapped out of the flashback and Liz asks B, how often did he lay into you? He's like, he never laid a hand on me. And in the next flashback, we see Harry grabbing B by the hair and pulling it and talking shit. You know what I'm saying? Basically telling her how embarrassing it was, telling a bunch of coppers what a loser he is, trying to fucking take his own life. And he's like, and if you end up getting caught for this, it's because you're too dumb to do anything right. You make sure you stick to the story. And that was it. So now we're back in the cell and Liz is like, you shouldn't have stood up to Jax like that. And B's like, oh boy, what is she gonna do? And Liz is like, I don't know. At the moment, she's got Frankie to worry about. When Frankie's on the warpath, everything else goes out the window. And Kim, in this moment, comes running into the cell talking about Liz. Boomer has a crew waiting outside. And Doreen is like, oh shit, Kaya's out there. And she runs out frantically to go get Kaya, who's in the yard in the midst of an upcoming fucking fight, okay? So Liz is like, where's Frankie? And they all leave except for B. You know what I'm saying? So Frankie is now walking down the halls with two of the inmates looking badass, okay? When all of a sudden Doreen comes running, fucking flying past her like a bat out of hell, running to go get Kaya. And so now we're in the yard and we see Kaya sitting on the grass, surrounded by all these fucking women that are about to fucking fight, hit each other, cut each other, all types of shit. And I'm just sitting there and I'm like, how the fuck is this little girl in Wentworth? You know what I'm saying? How is this possible? And so Doreen runs out into the yard. She grabs Kaya and she gives Tony a dirty ass look as she's walking off with Kaya. And I remember thinking, what the fuck was that all about? And so I was like, she's probably mad at Tony because you're right here next to this little girl. Instead of picking her up and bringing her to safety, like y'all all are just standing there. And I wondered, but why did she look at Tony specifically? So as Doreen is walking out of the yard, Frankie is walking into the yard. And so is Liz. And Liz tells Frankie, yo, you don't need to do this. And Frankie's like, she started it. And then Frankie asks Boom, are you ready? And Boomer says, yeah, I'm ready. So Doreen runs into B's cell with Kaya. And she's like, Frankie is going to do Jackson. You look after Kaya, yeah? And B is like, what are you going to do? And Doreen is like, whatever Frankie wants. So in this episode, it's established that the women do what Frankie says, irregardless of the fact that Jax is top dog. You know what I'm saying? Frankie still has her own crew. So meanwhile, in the yard, the women are all passing shifts to each other. And the suspenseful music is playing. And Liz is like, yo, women are going to get hurt. And Frankie is like, only if they're with Jax. And Liz is like, let's just everyone go inside and everyone calm down. And Frankie says, I am calm. Oh, I loved that part. She says, I am calm while simultaneously pushing Liz out of her fucking way. It was great. I loved it. So Liz walks off to the side, like there's nothing I could do about it. And Frankie and Jax are staring at each other. So they're staring at each other. Frankie smiles at her. Both the crews are squared up and they start walking towards each other. Frankie kicks one of the women in the gut and sends her flying. It's a brawl. You know what I'm saying? Some chick goes running up to Boomer. Boomer's like all excited to get it popping. You know what I'm saying? So the women are fighting. They're getting shivved. Some of them are getting fucked up. Frankie's tossing bitches left and right. Boomer's fucking shit up. Frankie's kicking ass. Jacqueline Holtz never threw one punch, all right? And when I said to myself, if there was any inmate in Wentworth who didn't fight their own fucking battles, it was Jacqueline Holtz, not Luke Kelly. Caramba. So the screws end up coming and telling them to break it up. Jax walks calmly off into her unit, you know what I'm saying? Frankie sees her as she's trying to leave and she runs in after her. In this moment, when they slow motioned Frankie running after Jax, she reminded me of the Incredible Hulk. I don't know why, but she did. And so we see, the screws in the yard. Vera and Meg are in the yard and Fletcher, you know what I'm saying? They're trying to stop it. So now inside the halls of Wentworth, the women are running off into their units. You know what I'm saying? You got women running everywhere. It's fucking chaos. They're screaming, they're bleeding. And now we're in the cell with B. So we see B with Kaya in the cell, and Kaya's like, can I have my teddy? And B's like, oh, you want your teddy? Is your teddy in your room? So B Smith was in the slot. She had no idea. She's got no idea that the fucking guards took her teddy bear. You know what I'm saying? Kaya's teddy bear. So B goes and tells Kaya, stay here while I go to your room and look for it. The alarms are going off. Women are screaming in pain in the distance. And B's just like, oh my God. You know what I'm saying? But she goes into the room to look for Kaya's teddy bear. Back in the halls of Wentworth, the women are running. We see Jacs sitting calmly in her cell, and she looks pissed off. So Frankie comes in, shiv in hand, and she's laughing. And she's like, your time's up then, huh? And all of a sudden, two of Jax's crew members grab Frankie and disarm her. And Frankie's like, get the fuck off of me. What is this, huh? A 3-up? Like 3 against 1 type shit. So now we're back to B. B is going back to her cell to let Kaya know that her teddy bear is gone. And to B's surprise, not only is the teddy bear gone, but so is Kaya. Kaya is no longer in the fucking cell. Fucking kids, bro. So B runs out of the unit and starts yelling out Kaya's name, running frantically, looking for this little girl. You know what I'm saying? Back in Jack's cell. So Jacqueline picks up Frankie's shiv and walks up to her while the two women are holding her arms down. You know what I'm saying? She's defenseless now. That shit is so whack. So, but she would have beat the shit out of Jax had those women not had been there. She would have killed her. So Jax is like, you know, girls like you come in with your swagger and your youth. But underneath, you're just a scared little girl. And once I've stripped you of your tits, I'll show you the real Frankie Doyle. And I was like, oh my God, why are her tetas? So she goes towards Frankie's chest with the shiv. Frankie looks worried. The next scene is back in the hallways. It's B. Smith running, frantic, looking for Kaya. She sees a sea of teal, okay? And in the distance, she sees little Kaya with her purple-ass sweater. She goes running after her. As fast as she saw Kaya is as quick as Kaya disappeared. So now the next scene is Jax. She's got the knife on Frankie's chest, and she cuts right across Frankie's chest tattoo of the flaming dice, all right? Frankie don't scream, though. She doesn't make a fucking sound. This is Frankie's thing. She's not a screamer. She's not going to give you the satisfaction of hearing her scream. So she was about to cut her boob off when all of a sudden comes storming in Boomer, and she grabs the two ladies. You know what I'm saying? And she gets them off of Frankie. So Boomer's like, get the fuck off of her. She bashes one of the chicks' head against the brick wall, and Frankie then grabs the chick, slams the shit out of her to the floor, and starts kicking the fucking shit out of her. Jax, though, is backing up the whole time. Knife in hand, shiv in hand, but backing the fuck up, because she knows what's good for her. You know what I'm saying? Looking scared as fuck. So Boomer is grabbing Frankie, trying to stop her so they could leave before the screws come. Frankie's struggling, trying to get to Jax, and Booms, you know, is telling her, we got to go. So she gets Frankie out of the cell. Then she takes the second chick, slams her against the wall, and gives Jax a look before, like, you know, running out of the cell. And I loved that look. I was like, oh my God, Boomer is no joke. Back in the halls of Wentworth, B is still running, looking for fucking Kaya, okay? She spots her again, and she runs after her. She turns the corner and then suddenly slips or trips against something. I really don't know what happened, if she slipped or if she tripped. I think she may have tripped over something, and then she falls to the floor, right? She looks up. She sees Kaya. Kaya looks scared and on the verge of tears. You know what I'm saying? Kaya's backing up away from B. Smith, and Doreen in this moment comes, and Kaya runs into Doreen's arms. Doreen picks her up, and then she looks towards B and like stops walking and looks shocked as shit. And I'm just saying to myself, yo, what the fuck do these people see on the floor? You know what I'm saying? I knew it was some shit. I just had no idea what it was. B is now realizing, what's up with these bitches? Why they keep backing up? Why are they looking at me? And then she looks down at her own hands and she sees blood. A lot of it, okay? She sees the blood, and she's like confused, like, what the fuck is this? And then she looks She sees where the women are looking. She sees the women are not looking at her. They're looking next to her. And so B. Smith turns her head to see what the fuck the women are looking at. And she's horrified by what she sees. It's Meg Jackson, the governor of Wentworth. This beautiful woman with dimples laying on the floor with a fucking fork or some type of kitchen utensil sticking out of her. This is proof of why I'm saying they shouldn't have metal cutlery in Wentworth Correctional Center. So she's just on the floor. She's dead on the floor. There's mad blood. She's in a puddle of blood. You know what I'm saying? The damn shiv is sticking out of her chest or whatever the fuck that is. Fork, whatever it is. And B gets up, quick. And she's covered in blood. There's blood everywhere. So now more women start showing up. Liz shows up. Other women show up. And they're all there seeing looking on in horror at B. Smith's bloody ass standing up over the body of a dead Meg Jackson, who's the fucking governor, okay? So I remember thinking, oh shit, they done fucking killed the governor. Next thing you know, in that moment, who comes running? We see Will Jackson running in the halls. And he's looking, and then he looks towards B. Smith, and then he sees her. He sees his wife dead on the floor. Oh my God. So Will, he sees her, and then he looks at B. You know what I'm saying? Like, what? And then he bends over the lifeless body of his wife and starts crying. He starts yelling, somebody call an ambulance. Oh God. And Fletcher's like 05 to 01. We need an ambulance. Real quick, is it 0501 or is it Sierra 5, Sierra 1? Because sometimes when I'm looking at the captions, like right now, for example, it said 05 to 01, we need an ambulance. In seasons further on, the captions will say Sierra 1, Sierra 5. Which one is it? Is it 05 or is it Sierra 5? Let me know. Why the fuck would it be Sierra 5? I don't fucking know. I don't know. So Will is looking at B crying. Okay, hysterically crying. He looks pissed off. He's like, no. Vera then gets onto the scene and she looked shocked as shit when she saw Meg on the floor. And she's looking at B like, oh my God. So Will is screaming, you know what I'm saying? And everyone's just looking shocked. And the episode ends. And that was the end of the very first episode of Wentworth. Yo, it was so good. After watching that, I was just like, I have to know what happens next. The craziest part of this episode was the fact that Meg Jackson, the fucking governor of the prison, ends up dead on the ground. Okay? I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting that at all. So that was it, world. Let me just say that by the time this episode was over, I loved Frankie. I loved Liz. I loved Will, all right? I loved all of these people from the very first episode. I'm like, oh my God, I need to know what happens to these people. I was so intrigued by B. Smith's character and what happened to her. And then Doreen and Kaya, I'm like, how does Doreen end up in here with her daughter? You know what I'm saying? We find out later exactly who Kaya is. And I was surprised when I found out who Kaya was. So world, how did you like this episode 1 review? It's like watching it for the first time all over again. Alright, that's it. If you like this video, you already know what to do. Like my shit, subscribe to my channel if you've not already. What else? And the notification bell. Ring the notification bell. Press the you know what to do. You know what to do. Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching. Bye.